Hey everybody, Young Grasshopper here. Welcome to my G40 tutorial video series where I teach you how to play Axis and Allies 1940 Global 2nd Edition. To follow along, you're going to need a copy of Axis and Allies Europe 1940 2nd Edition, as well as a copy of Axis and Allies Pacific 1940 2nd Edition. We're going to combine these two games to play one game. It's an expansion called 1940 Global 2nd Edition. So what is it? Well, plain and simple, it is a World War II strategy board game designed by Larry Harris. Now, take a look at 2nd edition graphic. These are the only games that are in print right now. Don't worry about not playing 1st edition or owning it. They're very rare, and 2nd edition was an improvement on that anyway. Let's take a look at the Europe board where it says 2 to 5 players. And on the Pacific, 2 to 4 players. Don't worry about that. Once we combine these, we're going to be able to play this game with up to 6 players. Of course, it's just as great playing with 2 players one-on-one. This game scales very, very well. So the 12 and plus, I'd say, is accurate. Age 12 and up. 14 years old might be a little bit better. But all in all, great to play with the kids. Great family game. It is complex, and that's why I'm here, to help you guys get through the intimidation and get into a great hobby and a great game. So let's open it up. Let's look inside. Okay guys, we've opened the box. We're going to take a look at the components inside each game. And I can tell you that this is not my first time opening up a Europe 1940 and a Pacific 1940. I have opened up many over the past decade. But this is the current printing run. And I can already sense that there's a few things different. Maybe the smell of it, I don't know. But I'm going to be curious to see if there are any different graphics or fonts that they use. But anyway, for you, this may be your first time taking a look at it, and that's fine. So over here on the Europe game, we have some punch outs. These are called roundels or control markers or counters. Okay, the Pacific game also has them. They have some different ones. Don't worry about keeping them separated. I would encourage you guys to just bring it all together into one. I can tell you that I have never ever played the individual theater game Europe before alone, and I have never played the individual theater game Pacific alone. In all my gaming dealing with the 1940 franchise game, I have always brought them together to play global. So you might want to keep them separated, but I highly recommend that you just bring all the components together, put them all in one box to make one game. Let's move on here. All this needs to be punched out, of course. We've got a battle board. We'll go into that, of course, during the video series. The rule book. And again, another rule book. We have something called a 2 rule book system. All right, this is what's going to make this video series very, very valuable, because it is difficult to learn the game using the 2 rule book system. The reason why they have it is because they designed the rule book specifically for one game, Europe theater game, and again, Pacific game, to deal with all the Pacific mechanics. But in the very back of both books, you'll find the expansion rules called global rules. And that is the game that I'm teaching in this video series, the global rules. So we'll get more into that dynamic about the rule books later. We have more counters and a battle board. Okay, some things are going to be doubled up a lot, you'll find. So a beautiful board. We'll show that to you in the next clip when it's laid out. And yep, I can already see that this printing run has a different font for the C-zone number. So very excited to open this particular edition, this particular printing run. They seem to have done things a little bit different. So I'm excited to see what those differences are. So beautiful boards. We're going to take a look at them later, but here we have these trays, piece trays. They're going to hold the plastic pieces or plastic miniatures in the game. They're all nicely bagged up. Again, we're going to bust open these bags. This is the Pacific game. We've got plastic chips, dice, more miniatures. Each nation has its own colored miniatures and in many cases has their own designs for the different miniatures, differentiating the difference between like Japan infantry, British infantry, lots of different sculpts here, which makes this interesting. Now, talk about that a little bit. The components in this game are not very thrilling when you're just doing an unboxing. Sure, there's some plastic, there's a couple boards, some punch out counters, got some trays, but not very exciting when it comes to some of the more epic, more expensive board games out there and all the pieces, cards, components, a lot of beautiful games out there. And I can tell you that this is not very appealing when it comes to the money that you spent for it. A couple boards, some punch outs and some plastic. Couple boards, some punch outs, some plastic, some underwhelming trays. But I can tell you that this game has so much drama, so much strategy, so much discussion. It's so much fun, dynamic, and something that we like to call in the hobby, it has magic. And you may not sense that by the components that you see that I've brought out of these expensive games, but we're going to show you how to improve your gaming experience by adding to this, because when you love it and you play for hours and hours with close friends, you want to better your experience. We're going to show you some tricks throughout this series how to do that. So let's get to the table. Let's spread out this board and show you how we're going to just separate these components, get it ready for gameplay. Be right back. All right, everyone, here it is, a first impression look of the board as part of our unboxing, if you will. And just to go over a few things, of course, in future videos, we'll talk about all the information and how we're going to use the map board during gameplay. But right now, if it's your first time looking at it, I'll point out we have some reference information in the mobilization zone. And at the very top there, we have what's called an income tracker. I'll show you guys how to use that in a future video, but take a look there right in the center. You'll see it stops at 40 and begins again at 1. And that's one of the many little nuances in this game, because we have two separate theater games that were produced as individual games, bringing them together to play one. But don't worry, there are some solutions. I'll show you in future videos how we fix that. But overall, beautiful board, lots of vivid colors. I can tell you that this is a very large playing surface and almost 6 feet. You're going to need a large table, family dining table perhaps, and not just for the board, but all the components and trays as well. I want to point out a few things that I noticed. In the last clip, I had a feeling that they changed some things in this print run, and the territory names have a new font. Looks like American typewriter, very clean, I like it. However, take a look at the territory values, which is the number above the text there. They do not encircle them anymore. In past maps, they were circled. And I can show you an example because for some reason, America still has the circles around their values. So you can see the difference there. In Eastern United States, Central United States, the territory value has a circle around it. Strange that they left that, but all the other territory values do not have them. I kind of like the circles, but we have a new font for the C-zone numbers. C-zone numbers, that's like an impact bold, I believe. But lots of different little graphic changes. Now, I am disappointed that they didn't take the time to fix some things. So they obviously went into the file and changed it to produce this map. It's different. But they did not do little things like make the convoy zones more visible. You can see the symbols there. They're very dark against a dark blue. And the same as these kamikaze symbols. And that's important information during gameplay, and it's hard to see. It's always been hard to see, so I'm surprised that they didn't fix that. And also, like every other board I've opened, the color of blue between the two boards is slightly different. Always darker on Japan, lighter on Europe, so they didn't fix that. So another thing that kind of bothers me is that just because the map board kind of separates here, they kind of avoided putting the Western Germany text in the center, and they've kind of squished it into the corner here just so it doesn't go across this seam. I would have rathered it go across the seam than, be stuck on the left-hand side like that. Kind of makes it a little bit more obvious. But anyway, I digress. Hopefully in the future, the new Renegade Games, apparently who now are going to be in charge of distributing Axis and Allies franchise games, will listen to their fans when it comes to, these little small details, because we pay attention to them a lot. And it does bother me that they went in to make changes, but didn't think of everything. And the biggest one for me, and why not, take a look at the C-zone numbering over here. It starts at 120, 121, and goes up. You can see there, Eastern United States, 101. Now, the Pacific game came out first, way back, maybe 11 years ago. And because it came out first, they started numbering the C-zones 1, 2, 3, 4 on the Pacific side. But both games have now been out for a very long time. So if you were going to reprint and change the graphics on the board, why not just start left to right with 1, 2, 3, leading up to 120, 121. Anyway, that's a more of a larger ask, but yeah. So that's the board. And I'm going to now bring out all the other components. I'm going to punch out those little control markers and tabs. And we're going to start organizing the game so that it's easy to set up so we can begin playing. All right, be right back. All right, guys, we have all the components now in front of us. Let's take a look at what we did. So I punched out all the tabs and control markers from these cardboard grids here. These are garbage now. And also these empty plastic bags we opened up, and we poured out all the miniatures into these trays, their respective trays. We'll go over which color belongs to which nation in a future video clip. But yeah, I'll just say something now about these control markers. They're a good quality here in this print run. In the past, they've been thin, The Japan side had white backs and the Europe game had black backs. They're all the same now, so that's good. We'll go over all these naval bases, air bases, and factories and what they do, of course, throughout the tutorial series. Here's some kamikaze tokens. All right, so back up here, I just want to explain something about these trays. They're not very good for gameplay. In my experience, it's very difficult to find the unit that you're looking for when the trays are not compartmentalized and all the units are just splashed in together. There's something in this game called chipping in a unit and chipping out a unit, and it happens a lot, and you find yourself looking and sifting through, looking for the right unit that you're looking for. And there is a solution. So I want to explain that in each episode I'm going to be introducing a specific customization that is geared towards making your gaming experience better. And the first customization I want to introduce are piece trays. All right, now you could do anything, you could buy anything, you could even make cardboard inserts that compartmentalize the trays that you have. But in my experience, these are the best things that I have been able to find, and this is what I use. So they have a lid which keeps the dirt and everything off your pieces. There's 3 compartments, perfect size, and we have all of these here. I'm going to show you the label so that you can look it up yourself. I highly recommend them. Let it focus in there. And I'll put a link in the description box of this video where you can look these up. The easiest detail to share is that you can get them at Dollar Tree. I get all my plastic piece trays at Dollar Tree. Now, again, very portable as well. You put the lid on it, put an elastic band around there, and it's very easy to just move from game room to game room. And I'll show you in the next clip why it's important, but that is my first customization share. Okay, so plastic piece trays in episode 1, and by the time this video series is done, your game won't even be recognizable. Okay, once we're done introducing all the really neat things that you can do to get into the hobby is one part of it, and have those just basic essentials that help gameplay, and then get you started into maybe your own ideas to how you want your gaming environment to look for your friends. And again, the reason for this is so that you can separate your pieces, compartmentalize them so that they're easy to find. And the biggest reason is it takes up a lot of time watching somebody just sift through their tray looking for one piece. And time is valuable when we're gaming and playing Axis and Allies 1940 Global 2nd Edition. So in the next clip here, we're going to open up all these plastic trays. We're going to divide all the plastic pieces in their right place, along with the cardboard counters and the control markers. And we'll lay out the board and we'll continue to begin setting up. All right, be right back. All right, everybody, we are back, and I have all my plastic trays on the table, and we're getting ready to set up the board. We're gonna get there. But I really need to introduce all the nations and all the pieces in this clip so that we put a name to all the plastic units. And it's important because when we get into setting up the board, we're going to use the charts that are on the lids of the piece trays that came with the games. And if you take a look, we need to know what unit goes where, and we'll get into that later, but it's important that we introduce all the units and nations. We'll start here You can see that I have compartmentalized all the units in my plastic trays that I showed you earlier. And we're just going to get started. This is France. So the blue pieces belong to France. And we have an infantry, a tank, a mechanized infantry, artillery, AA gun, bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, transport, submarine, destroyer, cruiser, battleship, and aircraft carrier. And that's how I have organized France. You can see here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and on the other side 9. So 18 trays total. And I've been very strategic in how I lay out all the trays and what goes in which compartment. Now, France does not get used a lot. In many cases, things like battleships, tactical bombers, strategic bombers, they don't get used at all. They're going to collect dust, but that's okay. We're only using one tray for them. And we're going to get into these tan pieces now. This is the United Kingdom infantry, tank, mechanized infantry, artillery, AA gun, strategic bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, submarine, destroyer, transport, cruiser, battleship, and aircraft carrier. These are their roundels, and they have a special spot right there. So 2 trays for the British units, and it'll be 2 trays for everybody from here on in. And this is now Russia. These maroon pieces, Russia infantry, tank, mechanized infantry, artillery, AA gun, strategic bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, transport, destroyer, submarine, cruiser, battleship, aircraft carrier, and Russian control markers right there. So you're going to see, if you play back this particular clip, that many of the units for each nation have a different sculpt. So you'll need to get used to figuring out which sculpt for which nation, depending on its design. So Anzac, the gray pieces, Anzac, or Australia, okay? So their infantry, for example, very unique. So tank, mechanized infantry, artillery, AA gun, strategic bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, transport, destroyer, submarine, battleship, cruiser, aircraft carrier, and their roundel. That's what it looks like. And those go right there. You can see how I've organized my piece trays. Now, of course, you can do whatever you like in regards to separating your pieces. I'm just showing you how I organize mine and how I use the different compartments. I put all the land units outside of the infantry there, air units together, and then 6 total C units, the 3 here and the heavier 3 here. Now, I just want to point out that the American infantry in the Pacific game have slightly a different color. This is an olive color. This is more of a little neonish. So this is one of those unique little nuances when it just reminds you that you did have to bring together 2 games. So half my American infantry are a different color than the other half. But so America is the green. So tank, mechanized infantry, AA gun, artillery, strategic bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, destroyer, transport, submarine, cruiser, battleship, aircraft carrier, and of course their roundels or control markers. Let's go to the other side and we'll get into the end pieces here, the end trays. Now I have China in this little one compartment. They have infantry only. Now they are allowed to have artillery in some cases and a fighter, and you're told in the rulebook to use the American pieces for those two particular units when needed for China. So this is the China roundel. I put this in here. Now, because the French roundels do not get used very often, I put them in here. There's also a couple of these Union Jacks. They're used for the income tracker and whatnot. I'll put them in there as well. They don't get used very often. And kamikaze tokens, these blue, there's 6 of them. They're specific for Japan. And I put them in there because they don't get used very often either. So now we have a few community type counters. The factory with the 10 is called a major industrial complex. The factory with the 3 is called a minor industrial complex. Sorry, did I say major and minor? Okay. So we have air bases and naval bases, and they're all right there. We're going to need those in the setup. There's a lot of them. Now we move on to Japan, these pumpkin orange, if you will. So Japan, infantry, tank, mechanized infantry, artillery, AA gun, strategic bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, transport, destroyer, submarine, cruiser, battleship, aircraft carrier, and the rising sun symbol there are the control markers. Now I'm going to continue. I'm going to come back to these and I'm going to continue with Germany. So black pieces for Germany, they're infantry, tank, mechanized infantry, artillery, AA gun, bomber or strategic bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, and they have this flat looking boat, that's a transport, destroyer, submarine, they're very thin but they stand up okay, submarine, cruiser, battleship, aircraft carrier, and the Iron Cross for their control markers. And finally, Italy, these brown, Italy. So infantry, mechanized infantry, tank, artillery, AA gun, strategic bomber, tactical bomber, fighter, transport, destroyer, submarine, cruiser, battleship, and aircraft carrier. And their roundels or control marker right there. All right. So coming back, gonna take a look at these chips. It's important. So when setting up, okay, the gray chips are single, the green chips are 3, and the red chips represent 5. So if we have units on top of these chips like so, we're going to count the value of the chip color plus the unit on top, the single unit on top. So in this case, we have 1 gray chip plus the infantry, that's 2 infantry. Here we have a 3 chip plus the single unit on top. That means that represents 4 tanks, and a 5 plus the single unit on top represents 6 artillery in that case. So if we have, say, all three of these chips, okay, a 5, a 3, and a 1 with a unit on top. That's 5, 8, 9, and the unit on top, 10. So there's 10 infantry represented there. So you're going to need to understand that as we set up the game. So you can see how I've organized my pieces. People that play around my game table know exactly where their units are if they're looking for something. Okay, and we have underneath the lids, so when you finish playing you can put the lids on top. Keeps a lot of the dirt and dust off your pieces, and while you're playing they fit perfectly underneath, like so. All right, so we'll just put these back. And of course, the dice are self-explanatory. All right, we're getting ready. We're getting closer to setting up. It's important to show new people that have never played any type of Axis and Allies franchise again, the different units, because when we do set up, you're gonna need to know what those units are while you're placing them on the board. All right, guys, be right back, and I'll show you the next step before we fill this table with all kinds of plastic. All right, be right back. All right, everybody, we have finished setting up the board. We're getting ready to play. This will be the last clip in this episode, episode 1 of my Axis and Allies 1940 Global 2nd Edition tutorial series. And we're going to do a couple flybys here. So we used the charts that are on your trays to place all these plastic units and their quantities where they belong on the map. This is called the starting setup. All right, now those charts are the only place you will find the setup. You won't find them in the rule books at all. However, I will put a link in the description box of this video sending you to a page on axisandallies.org where I have provided charts for setting up, so you can print those, especially if you've lost the setup, the trays, or if you just simply want to throw them out if you have no use for them anymore. And you can print those documents. Also, in the same page over there, I've also provided an entire components list. So in the rule books, there is not a detailed components list. And I have done one, and in the link that I just shared in the description box, you will find the setup charts and the detailed components list. Now, just a little trick, take a look here. I have brought out a battle board and I've set it up there with all the Allied pieces that belong there in France. And you'll see that it's just an automatic thing that the Axis powers go in and attack that territory. So instead of clogging up the board, especially in Europe, which is already pretty congested, we just went ahead and put those units directly on the battle board. Now, I'm going to sign off here for episode 1. In the next episode, I'm going to show you a couple more tricks. Okay, before I begin teaching the game, I just want to point out, take a look after the setup. This is all that's left for plastic chips. This is everything remaining after we used what we needed to set up the board, obviously. That's going to become relevant later on when we run out of chips, but there's solutions for everything. And like I said, in every episode, I'm going to introduce one customization for you guys that is going to help your overall gameplay. In this episode, of course, we discussed these plastic trays. Not only are they extremely useful, handy, perfect for our gaming experience. You can use them in other board games with a lot of components, and they're cheap. They're under $2 each. Again, at Dollar Tree. Look in the description box for the link I provided for those if you want to just get those. A lot of people have other ideas, custom made wooden trays or cardboard inserts for the trays that come with the game. So thanks a lot, guys. That is episode 1. Stay tuned as I roll out more videos in this tutorial series teaching you how to play Axis and Allies 1940 Global 2nd Edition. Thanks for watching. Cheers. See you in the next video.